Guilty pleasures, sinful snacks, satisfying treats. Sweets are the ultimate indulgence.
Sweets taste good, sugar tastes good.
Candy makers go to great lengths to please your palate.
Our concept was, let's just not make a jelly bean. Let's make the best jelly bean in the world.
But behind every simple treat is a complex factory.
Technology has really changed this factory quite a bit.
And top secret recipes.
By keeping it confidential, we maintain an edge on anybody.
Uncover the massive machinery that produces 500 million Twinkies every year.
It is astounding what machines can do.
The technology that puts the chunks in Ben & Jerry's ice cream.
I just love it. It's so good.
We want to have our consumers be really wowed by the flavors that we create.
And the secret device that breathes life into Peeps.
Going from 27 hours to make a chick, we're now down to about 6 minutes. So it's just a great invention.
From the minds of scientists to the mouths of millions on Fantastic Food Factory's Sweet Tooth. Humans and sweets. It's a centuries-old love affair and a passion that's turned small mom-and-pop candy makers into global empires. Their ambition? Make the most while keeping the taste. Today, these candy empires feature highly trained designers and leading-edge technologies, all determined to satisfy your sweet tooth.
There's so many different things out and available in the market right now, and a lot of competition, and you have only seconds to catch somebody's attention at the shelf.
These companies bank on one thing: your sugar cravings. Cravings that are so powerful, they're borderline obsession. In fact, humans might even be hardwired for sweet, sugary indulgences. There's evidence that most babies, after a short period of time, crave sweet flavors more than other flavors, and that humans enjoy the taste of something sweet because of certain chemicals in the brain. They're the #1 gourmet jelly bean maker in America, with 50 official flavors. Every day, the Jelly Belly factory in Fairfield, California, produces 250,000 pounds of its famous gourmet beans. That's the same weight as a small airplane. You'd think it would be a snap to turn out these seemingly basic candies, but you'd be amazed. Gooey on the inside, shiny on the outside, there's sophistication in this sweet. The origin of the jelly bean itself is also complicated. Some believe the soft center comes from a Middle Eastern confection known as Turkish delight that dates back to biblical times. In 17th century France, the outer shell was invented through a process called panning. Candy makers rocked a pan of almonds, sugar, and syrup until a candy shell formed around each nut. In the 1900s, the jelly bean first appeared in America. By the 1930s, its distinctive egg shape led to its popularity as an Easter treat. Lisa Brasher's family founded Jelly Belly. She's the 5th generation to take over the reins of the century-old candy-making company. She traces their success back to those penny candy days.
That was when penny candy was very popular, and you could go into a drugstore or a fountain store and give them a penny and get a couple pieces of candy, and that's basically how we started out.
The Jelly Belly Candy Company started out as the Golitz Confectionery Company. Founder Gustav Golitz emigrated from Germany in 1867. By 1869, he and brother Albert mastered the science and skill of candy making. Gustav's great-grandson, Herman Roland, runs the company today. He remembers hearing tales about Gustav.
Gustav was the mighty candy maker. He was known in the family as being rough and tough and making things happen. You didn't say no to Gustav. You got it done.
Starting with candy corn, the Golitz brothers soon branched out to create other confections and quickly established a reputation for their high-quality candies. The Golitz family expanded their business to the West Coast in 1921. The family continued to make their penny candy for a quarter of a century, but in 1976, one of Herm Roland's distributors came up with an idea that revolutionized the business. He wanted to create the most flavorful, upscale jelly beans ever. Jelly Bellies made their debut as the first gourmet jelly bean. Traditional jelly beans featured only flavored shells. Jelly Belly flavored both the shell and the gooey inner center.
They really took the industry by storm by introducing new flavors and colors and the sweet sour, the different combinations that really got exciting to the consumer. So they took an old vehicle and really kind of renewed its spirit.
The uniquely flavored beans quickly won fans around the world, including California Governor Ronald Reagan. In 1981, Jelly Belly shipped 3.5 tons of beans to his presidential inauguration.
The sales of the company went absolutely wild. It was the fondest dream of any candy maker.
To keep up with demand, Jelly Belly opened their current factory in Fairfield, California in 1986. Jelly Belly produces 50 official flavors, including buttered popcorn, berry cherry, watermelon, and strawberry daiquiri. Every year, the company releases new flavors. They're called rookies, and Jelly Belly hopes they'll eventually hit a home run with consumers. Their latest creations include smoothie flavors and sports beans for athletes who need an extra energy boost.
We will do taste testing, and we will rate each Jelly Belly flavor on color, texture, and flavor. And it really has to have what my dad calls the wow. It's got to be a wow flavor in order to make it out in our line, and especially to make it into the top 50 flavors.
It takes more than a week to make each Jelly Belly, and each step in the process must be precise or the outcome could be disastrous. Behind every bean, there is a balance of exact science and the human touch at work.
The engineering process is very unique and complex. It's not a simple task to make that little jelly bean.
One of the most intense processes involves creating the Jelly Belly's tender core. Candy makers skillfully blend water, sugar, 2 types of starch, and 2 types of corn syrup in a 1,000-pound kettle. Starch is a complex carbohydrate used in cooking to thicken. Corn syrup is a syrup used to sweeten.
It is built to have a really nice gel texture, consistency, and also maintain a wonderful shelf life for the product.
The factory churns out 10,000 pounds of liquid mixture called slurry an hour. After it's cooked at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, candy makers add everything from natural fruit extracts to purees like chocolate and peanut butter. It's crucial that they add the precise amount of flavor and color.
This is where we decided not to use computers and not to use pumps and not to use scales. We are using the human mind to make a perfect piece of candy.
As you can see, he takes a sample of every kettle. This basically gives him the ability to know whether or not he's added all the ingredients correctly. If this one turns out to be a little lighter than this, that means he hasn't added quite the amount of color that may have needed to go into this one.
Walt Weiser supervises the Jelly Belly factory. With nearly 20 years of experience on the floor, he's one of the most accomplished candy makers.
Right now you're in the mogul room. This is the second step in making a jelly bean.
The candy mixture travels downstairs through a tube to the mogul machine, the powerhouse of the factory. It's a multitasker that molds, cooks, and handles up to 4,000 pounds of slurry per hour. Without this machine, production would be drastically altered. The slurry is deposited into starch molds that shape the bean core. Each tray holds 1,260 bean molds, and the mogul must run about 28 trays every minute to meet the daily demand. The mogul cooks the slurry mixture at exactly 250 degrees.
You're also cooking it so that you can get the water out of the system and get it to just the right amount of moisture content in the candy so it won't be too soft or won't be too hard. And that's a factor of temperature.
The cores harden overnight in the drying room. Next, the beans move on to mighty machines for the next process, the engrossing process, which builds the outer shell of the Jelly Belly. Each of these giant rotating drums holds 200 pounds of jelly beans. The secret is the way Jelly Belly layers the sugar and syrup. Over 2 hours, they do this wetting procedure 4 times.
Wetting is what they do when they engross the candy. They're trying to build the shell up on the candy. So they put a wetting on, then they add sugar to it so they can build that bean up to the correct size that we need for a jelly bean.
You're building up on there because you're adding sugar and syrup, sugar and syrup. It's like a snowball, building up, building up, building up.
The Jelly Bellies must gain 30% more weight to form the correct sized outer shell.
There are automated systems, we just haven't done it. We haven't done it because every time we try it, it doesn't make the quality bean that we want to have made today.
The final polish happens here, inside these giant steel drums. Each can handle 500 pounds of beans. The candy makers dust the beans with sugar, syrup, and confectioner's glaze. As they tumble, the friction smooths the surface and creates the shiny sheen. But at Jelly Belly, it's all in the details. They're not willing to reveal everything.
We've spent 35, 40 years developing the process to do this. And it isn't something that I think we'd really like to completely explain in detail.
As technology advances, so does the efficiency of the Jelly Belly process. Creating new and flavorful gourmet jelly beans will always be a way of life for Jelly Belly.
There's an inexhaustible amount of flavors that we can produce. I don't think we'll ever run out of flavors.
As one of the smallest sweets around, Jelly Bellies satisfy many giant cravings with a factory that churns out more than 60 million pounds of beans a year. Jelly Belly will likely flourish for at least another century. Like the ancient pyramids, it's a mystery. In fact, the flavor behind licorice is one of the great mysteries of the entire sweets industry. But it's this allure that's won over fans year after year for nearly a century and made the American Licorice Company an American success story. The love of licorice dates back much further than the almost 100-year-old American Licorice Company. Prophets and pharaohs delighted in licorice. It's made from the root of the licorice plant, but the candy looks nothing like the root or the plant that it comes from. The plant is leafy green with colorful blooms and deep roots. The root of its very sweetness? Its main ingredient, glyceric acid.
The sweetness in licorice is due to an acid that naturally occurs in the plant, and it's slightly or almost equal to the sweetness in sugar.
Glyceric acid is so potent that it's detectable in 20,000 parts water. Licorice may taste good, but it can also make you feel good. In the 4th century BC, the ancient Greek botanist Theophrastus found it helped to cure coughs. Since then, it's helped heal ulcers, sore throats, and asthma.
There are compounds in licorice root that have medicinal properties, and they've been studied for many centuries for their curative effects.
Still, its sweetness is what attracts candy lovers the world over. Cough syrup, soda, cigarettes, and tobacco all use licorice root. In 1914, a German immigrant founded the American Licorice Company in Chicago, Illinois. Around World War II, the company took off. Their small black licorice pieces were a big hit.
Licoricettes was a very popular candy in the U.S., and during the war it was very difficult to get raw materials to make the product. And what that did was it made the consumer, I think, want it even more because it was rare.
In 1952, the American Licorice Company came up with another twist on licorice. Their trademark red vines. Today, red vines are known for their unique twisted shape, chewy texture, and tangy flavor called Original Red. It's hard to put a finger on the flavor itself, though.
It's not cherry, it's not strawberry, it's not raspberry. It's this concoction that was created out of a variety of flavors, and it's just considered Original Red.
Original Red is more popular than black licorice, but there's another fundamental difference between them, and it's not just color. In fact, it may surprise the most die-hard licorice fan that black licorice is the only product that actually uses licorice root.
Red licorice doesn't contain any licorice extract root, so in essence it really isn't licorice.
Making red vines is no simple job. It starts with a painstaking process called the batch method. Everything is made in batches. Greg Pignolet has worked for almost 3 years as a red vines engineer.
When we first started making candy 90 years ago, or 90 plus years ago, they made it in batches. It made the best candy. We found no way to improve on that. So all we found to do is to make improvements in the efficiencies on how we do it.
It works like this. Trains carry wheat, flour, and corn syrup to the factory, where they're stored outside in 7 silos. Then they're electronically pumped into giant kettles that can hold 4,500 pounds.
First step he's doing is actually adding the syrup, and then we're going to add flour, make it a nice doughy, smooth batter, which will probably take about 10 to 15 minutes. After that's done, he's going to actually add the fructose and water, and then we'll add the color and the other ingredients.
The cooking process is critical because the starches within the product have to be activated in order to get the product to blend well and stay blended. Otherwise, it could separate before the candy is pressed.
Determining whether it's really cooked or not calls for one of the most critical and unusual steps in the red vines process. It's called the slap test, and it determines whether or not the batch is worthy of becoming licorice. It's a system that dates back to its original candy-making days.
What we do is we reach in and we test the texture of the candy 2 ways. We run our hand across it to visually check the texture. We also do what's called slapping the candy, listening for certain sounds, and then also looking to see how the candy rebounds, and that's what tells us when the product is done.
The slap test relies solely on human intuition. It's only man, not machinery, who can make the call here. The American Licorice Company trains all their cooks in the trade. By merely feeling and slapping the dough, they will know if the batch is ready.
He's ready. There's no scientific way to automate the process. It's passed along from cook to cook, from generation to generation. The best way that they tell how the candy is cooked is they go up and they feel it, they look at it, they taste it.
Once the batch passes the test, candy makers place the dough into cans that hold 400 pounds apiece. Each kettle will fill about 13 cans. The licorice must cool down for 24 to 48 hours before the extrusion process, which shapes and twists the licorice into a rope-like product. The extrusion process is one of the most fascinating in the factory. Unlike the slap test, it relies on sophisticated mechanics.
Now this is where the candy comes run through the chute here, and as we're coming down, it comes into this twin feed pump. It'll come out here. In this case, we're using the pump on my left-hand side. It'll come through the pipe here, all the way across the pipe here, down into the special die, and here we have this special pulley there that is actually turning the spindles here, and that's what puts the curl in the candy.
This machine creates Red Vine's characteristic twisted shape. Here's how it works. Once the dough is loaded, the machine injects air through the die, the piece of equipment that forms the licorice twist. The air creates a hollow tunnel inside each twist. The key to keeping the air inside is to quickly seal off the ends. Then it moves on to one of 113 drying rooms or ovens in the press area.
We are in the press area right now, and I'm going to show you the ovens where the racks go in there with the candy. This is the inside of the drying room here, which holds about 28 racks at approximately about 3,000 pounds of candy.
The licorice dries up to 16 hours before it's ready for packaging. Both the jars and distinct wrapping of Red Vine's licorice harken back to the penny candy era. But the packaging film is more than just decoration.
They have a vapor barrier that's built into the film. It actually has a very low water vapor transmission rate. That's what helps ensure the freshness of our candy.
With the film acting as a moisture barrier, this keeps the candy very soft, very easy to chew.
At the American Licorice Company, the combination of old world process and modern machinery will continue to bring sweet success to Red Vines. When it comes to satisfying a sweet tooth, Ben & Jerry's fantastic food factory produces nearly 17 million gallons a year of some of the world's wildest and wackiest ice cream flavors. They've pioneered additions like chunks, dough, and brownies, and the technology that makes it all come together.
We pride ourselves in bringing something new to our ice cream consumers that they've never even dreamt of.
So I love Ben & Jerry's because they've done a great thing with making all those really geeky, decadent, great ice creams.
But ice cream wasn't always so sophisticated or easily available. It was a rare delicacy. In the 4th century BC, Roman Emperor Nero ordered his minions to bring ice from the mountains so he could top it with fruit. England's King Henry V enjoyed ice cream at his coronation, and Dolly Madison served it at the second White House inaugural ball. Back then, making ice cream was hard work. You'd hand mix it in a bowl that was surrounded by ice and salt. The ice itself was cut from frozen lakes or ponds and stored in wooden ice boxes. In 1846, the hand-cranked churn made ice cream production easier. But it wasn't until the invention of refrigeration in the 20th century that allowed ice cream to be made on a massive scale. In 1977, lifelong friends Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield decided to start a food business together. Best friends since junior high school, Ben and Jerry both had worked at ice cream parlors over the years. They dreamed of opening some sort of food business, but ice cream wasn't their first choice.
They actually decided they want to go into bagel making, but bagel making machinery was too expensive, so they settled on ice cream.
When Ben and Jerry decided to get into the ice cream business, they needed to learn how to do that. So there was a correspondence course with Penn State University, which I believe was $5, and they got the course, got the open book test, completed with flying colors.
In 1978, Ben & Jerry's opened up a scoop shop in a renovated gas station in Burlington, Vermont. Today, the company produces 950,000 pints a week. Their top flavors include chocolate chip cookie dough, cherry Garcia, and chunky monkey. Their flavors set off one of the biggest rages in ice cream history. Arnold Carbone is one of the masterminds behind Ben & Jerry's latest and greatest flavors.
Ben & Jerry really took the chunky part of ice cream and exploded that on the industry. At first, I think people saw that as kind of being quirky or a fad, but with the launch of chocolate chip cookie dough, really catapulting over vanilla for the first time in the ice cream industry is, I think, what really awakened the whole ice cream industry.
With huge chunks of cookie dough, candy, and other sweets, Ben & Jerry's makes some of the most imaginative ice cream concoctions around. For engineer Pete Gosselin, this same wild imagination also pushes the limits of technology at their factory.
I work with an incredible group of flavor developers who push the boundaries of culinary experience. You can't go out to the shelf typically and buy the equipment you normally expect to make ice cream. We've had to modify a lot of equipment over the years and develop a lot in-house.
Two of the most massive machines in the factory start the process, the pasteurizer and homogenizer. They handle a huge volume of ingredients. Pasteurization kills harmful bacteria, while homogenization helps create the creamy mouthfeel of the ice cream. Homogenizing requires a high-pressure piston that breaks up and evens out the fat globules and cream. Product developer Derek Spores came to Ben & Jerry's right out of college. He tastes ice cream for a living and is known as the ice cream scientician.
A homogenizer is essentially a big machine that will force the mix through a very, very small opening under very high pressures. And it's literally just stuffing the fat through a tiny little opening so that the big ones can't get through. They have to break down.
But without freezing, it wouldn't be ice cream in the first place. At Ben & Jerry's, there are two very important and complex freezing processes. First stop, the giant Hoyer freezer. It's a monstrous stainless steel box that freezes 750 gallons of mix per hour.
The ice cream freezer is a huge piece of equipment that continuously makes ice cream. It never stops. It has what's called a barrel, which is a very long cylinder that's really cold on the outside. Inside this barrel, there's also what's called a dasher, which has extremely sharp knives. This liquid mix is fed to the back and starts to freeze to the barrel. These huge knives scrape the ice cream off of the barrel and turn it back into the middle.
During the process, the Hoyer freezer's temperature dips to 22 degrees. The freezing of the mix, combined with the whipping action, causes crystals to form. It all comes down to speed. The faster the freezing, the smaller the ice crystals. The smaller and more numerous the ice crystals, the smoother and creamier the texture.
Since ice cream is primarily water, ice crystals are one of your biggest concerns. As they get bigger and bigger and bigger, this is when the ice cream starts to get what you call coarse or icy.
And the temperature inside the Hoyer freezer must remain constant or the quality of the ice cream will be compromised. Think how your ice cream tastes after you left it out for a while and then put it back in the freezer. It's an icy, flaky, tasteless rock.
What really kills an ice cream product is the temperature fluctuations. If it gets warmed up, those little ice crystals melt, and as it cools down, they freeze to a bigger one. So getting warmer and then colder repeatedly will just destroy your ice cream.
When the mix exits the Hoyer freezer, it's the consistency of a milkshake. That makes it easier for the ice cream makers to blend in ingredients with chunks like brownies, cookie dough, or candy. They also add variegates or liquid swirls in the ice cream, such as fudge and caramel. Ice cream makers pump it out of 55-gallon barrels that weigh 500 pounds.
We use very powerful piston pumps to evacuate our fudge and caramel and other variegates out of our drums and get it into our process.
But there's still one more freezing process. This second freezing phase features the real workhorse of the operation. It's called the spiral hardener, and without it, there wouldn't be any Ben & Jerry's.
The spiral freezer really is an amazing piece of the ice cream making process. And from an engineering standpoint, it's a very impressive piece of equipment sitting at the center of the factory.
Standing 17 feet tall, the spiral hardener is shaped like a corkscrew. The freezer has 24 tiers and 1,427 feet of conveyor belt that holds nearly 4,000 pints of ice cream. This mammoth freezer gives new meaning to the term deep freeze. It drops the temperature of each pint to minus 10 degrees in only 2.5 hours.
The wind chill inside of a spiral can reach up to minus 120 degrees. This allows us to keep the ice crystals from ever growing any larger than the moment they were created in the Hoyer freezer.
Once they're frozen, some pints undergo a quality control test.
Every 15 minutes, pints are taken off the line and chopped to make sure all the chunks are there, all the variegate's in the right place, and that everything tastes just right. The way you probably don't eat ice cream at home, but we do here, is to chop them in half. When you do this, you get to see everything at a glance.
Derek tests a pint of one Ben & Jerry's newer flavors, black and tan. Cream stout ice cream swirled with chocolate ice cream.
So everything looks all right here, but the true test is how does it taste. And this one passes the test.
Workers package, bundle, and ship the ice cream to more than 15 countries. But in Vermont, Ben & Jerry's invites all their fans to visit the factory. Every year, more than 300,000 people take the tour. It's so popular that it's the state's #1 attraction.
All right, so today's flavor we're going to be trying is called Turtle Soup. It's a brand new flavor for 2006. It's a vanilla ice cream with a caramel swirl and caramel fudge-covered cashews. It's absolutely delicious. So go ahead and dig in.
Right on.
No.
Okay.
Like it?
I love it.
Yeah.
How is it, Mom?
It's good. There's no doubt Ben & Jerry's ice cream will continue to create many more unusual icy cold concoctions.
Just when you think they've, created everything, something brand new comes out. So there's just always something new and different to taste.
Every Easter, these tiny chicks make big noise as the #1 non-chocolate confection. But how does this fantastic food factory breathe life into these little peeps?
They're not just marshmallows. There's a lot of science that goes into making a peep, and it's very much that machine that may be the best kept sweet secret in the industry.
The Just Born Company produces about 1.5 billion peeps every year. 1 billion for Easter alone. Line up about 6,500 vertical peeps and they would equal the height of the Empire State Building. Marshmallow is one of the oldest confections in human history. It dates back to ancient Egypt, where candy makers flavored the honey-based confection with the root sap of the marshmallow plant. Marshmallow candy to a new level. Russian immigrant Sam Bourne came to America in 1910. He was a candy maker by trade with a knack for inventions. His most famous inventions include chocolate sprinkles called jimmies and the machine that inserted sticks into lollipops. In 1923, Sam Bourne opened a candy store in New York. Today, family members Ross Bourne and David Schaefer run the company.
My grandfather came over here from the Ukraine through Paris, where he had learned the candy trade by being a clerk in a candy store.
Family member David Schaefer explains how Sam named the company.
He said that his candy was so fresh, it was as if it was just born. And that, we believe, is one of the stories that is the creation of the name of the company.
Soon, Just Born expanded beyond chocolates to other candies. Owner Sam Bourne enlisted the help of his brothers-in-law, Irv and Jack Schaefer. The company moved its headquarters from New York to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where it is today. In 1953, they bought the Rada Candy Company of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And there, a backroom discovery changed the company and its candy forever.
In the back room in that Lancaster plant, there were some Amish women, and they were manufacturing these little marshmallow shapes, which eventually became known as the Peeps. And they were making them by squeezing them out of icing bags and then hand decorating each one. And it took about 27 hours to make one individual peep.
Today, it takes just 6 minutes to make one peep, and each day, Just Born produces 4 million peeps. The yellow chick is the #1 selling peep, followed by pink, lavender, blue, and white. Originally offered only at Easter, peeps are available all year long, with cats for Halloween and trees for Christmas. But behind these colorful creatures is an intricate chemical and mechanical technology that brings them to life. It begins in a massive blending kettle, where candy makers mix gelatin, corn syrup, starch, flavoring, and sugar. In fact, they use 3 kinds of sugar: granulated, liquid sugar, and sugar cane. That adds up to 34 million pounds of sugar each year. What makes Peeps a unique treat is its light texture. It's like eating air. There's one ingredient given this giant responsibility: gelatin. Gelatin is a protein-based substance that is used in cooking. When dissolved in hot water and cooled, gelatin becomes thick. It's critical to stabilizing the foamy texture and locking in the moisture that keeps the marshmallow fresh.
Gelatin helps us create the ultimate food foam. A foam is defined as an air bubble that's surrounded by liquid with a proteinaceous matter. In our case, the protein comes from gelatin. I believe that gelatin is really what separates marshmallow products from many other products.
After the gelatin thickens, the mixing kettle blends and cooks the ingredients at 230 degrees. This produces a light, fluffy texture.
If we don't control the cooking process correctly, we could end up with marshmallow that was very flat, wouldn't hold its shape, or would actually kind of explode, would lose the air and fall in on itself.
The mix travels through a series of valves and pipes to the aerator.
The aeration process is very similar to making a cake at home. You put your mixer on high and you beat your batter. Now if you picture a little pipe with air underneath the batter, and the blades are just incorporating that air, making little bubbles all through the batter, you get a much lighter, fluffier cake. We're doing the same thing with marshmallow.
Next, depositors drop the marshmallow shapes onto a bed of colored sugar. All the two-dimensional shapes, like Christmas trees or bunnies, go to one depositor where they're sliced. But the Peep chicks go to a secret machine unlike any other in the world. It's the same machine that's been producing Peeps from the beginning. It's so unusual and innovative, Just Born keeps it under wraps.
The machine and the way it works is top secret. We put curtains around it whenever we have people visiting. We hide it.
In 1954, Bob Bourne and a fellow engineer invented the one-of-a-kind machine to mass-produce these little creatures.
My father is an engineer, and during his early days at Just Born, he was always looking for ways to innovate.
They watched the motions and saw really what it took to manufacture these cute little fluffy things and build a machine. And as it stands right now, it's the only machine in the world that exists that goes through this kind of a motion of the proper speed, the proper incline, the proper squeezing of marshmallow to create the chick shape.
That's why you'll never see exactly how the Peeps chicks are made. But we do know one thing. This invention dramatically cut down cooking time.
Now, going from 27 hours to make a chick, we're now down to about 6 minutes to make a chick. So it's just a great invention.
After they're formed, each Peep travels through a sugar storm that evenly distributes colored sugar. Next, some of the Peep shapes, like Christmas trees, get a hand-stamped decoration. But the chicks head to a special place, the optometry department. This complex eye machine rolls over each chick and deposits colored wax to make the chick eyes. It can stamp 3,800 eyes per minute. Now, the Peeps are ready to march off to packaging. Today, Peeps are flying high as one of the most iconic sweet treats around. They've garnered a cult following that surprises their owners.
It's unbelievable the kinds of things that people really do want to do with our chicks and have fun with.
Some use Peeps in all kinds of recipes and even as pizza toppings. Others eat them stale, heated, or frozen. They're also the subject of books, greeting cards, and calendars. Peeps, they're more than just candy. They've earned a spot in American pop culture. Twinkies have been an American staple for over 75 years. And every year at their fantastic food factory, Hostess makes 500 million of them. 1,000 every minute. It's all about the science of volume and speed.
The oven that we have is a continuous bake oven. So it's consistently putting out 63,360 Twinkies every hour.
It was 1930 when Hostess bakery manager Jimmy Dewar created the new sweet cake that would take the snack food industry by storm. While managing the Chicago, Illinois factory, Jimmy searched for a new use for the strawberry shortcake pans that sat around during the strawberries off-season.
Jimmy, when creating the Twinkie, took pretty much the same type of batter that we were using for the shortcake and was experimenting with different ways that cake could live without strawberries. And he came up with the idea by experimenting with a banana cream that he injected inside, and the Twinkie was born.
Jimmy got the name from an unusual source.
He was driving in St. Louis one day and saw a billboard for Twinkle Toe shoes. And the name stuck on him, and he shortened it a little bit to Twinkie so it'd be a little bit zippier.
Twinkies were a ray of light during America's dark Great Depression. Hostess sold them 2 for a nickel. They were an instant success. When World War II struck, so did a banana shortage. Vanilla cream replaced the banana cream filling. But neither the war nor the filling could change this new love affair Americans developed for Twinkies.
I think that the Twinkie represents simplicity and consistency in American culture today. It's something they can count on. It's always been the same, and people like things they can trust and that are consistent.
By the 1950s, Twinkies were a lunchbox staple. By the 1970s, Twinkie the Kid was fighting crime, saving Twinkies, and gaining fans all across America.
Cliff! Twinkie the Kid! Help!
Let's go!
Twinkie, use your rope! We saved the herd!
Here's your reward, Hostess Twinkie.
Today, Twinkies are as American and familiar as apple pie. They've appeared on TV shows, and they're marketed alongside movies. Green cakes for Shrek, and banana cream filling for King Kong. Americans have even found ways to add Twinkies into their everyday recipes.
We put together a Twinkie cookbook with all of the great recipes that consumers have sent in. Things like Twinkie miso and Twinkie sushi. So it was a lot of fun to see how passionate our consumers were about their Twinkies and how they became part of their lives and their family routines and rituals.
In 1999, President Bill Clinton selected the Twinkie to be part of the nation's Millennium Time Capsule. Some wondered if the Twinkie had a shelf life that could indeed last a millennium.
The myths in Americana about the Twinkie are just funny. President Clinton thinks it's going to last forever. That is a myth. The Twinkie has a 25-day shelf life.
To churn out Twinkies by the millions, the factory relies on highly complex systems designed on a massive scale. The amount of ingredients alone is staggering. To make 500 million Twinkies per year, Hostess uses 8 million pounds of sugar, 7 million pounds of flour, and 1 million eggs.
So if you think about those components, your eggs and your flour are going to give you the structure, and then the sugar is going to give you the tenderness.
Sugar is the heart of every sweet treat, but it plays one of the most significant roles in this snack cake's texture.
When you do that, it gives you a different texture than if you leave sugar lumps in there.
The first stage, the mixing process. With 1,000 pounds of batter inside each mixer, it's imperative that all the ingredients are thoroughly mixed. If one thing goes wrong, the whole mix could be ruined. During the mixing process, sugar dissolves and develops air pockets that give Twinkies cakes their light, fluffy taste. The sugar must dissolve or the cake's physical structure will be at risk. Besides sugar, there's one more major ingredient. It costs nothing, but means everything to the process. Air.
We want to incorporate the right amount of air that adds to the texture of the cake.
The batter travels through a series of tubes to the depositor. This mega machine deposits batter into molded pans. Then it's on to the granddaddy of all ovens. At 75 feet long, it's the size of 3 stretch limos. With 4 preset cooking zones, its function is equally grand.
As it moves through the tunnel, it also provides the coloration and final setting of the cell structure, which gives you that spongy cake quality. Each zone is set at a predetermined temperature that raises the internal temperature of the batter to provide the texture and quality.
Inside the oven, the sugar absorbs water and blends and binds with the egg and flour to create a tender bite.
When the product leaves the oven, the internal temperature is 200 degrees. That's the temperature it takes to set the cell structure.
For the next 45 minutes, the Twinkies travel along a series of conveyor belts, cooling down to 100 degrees. If they don't, it would prove disastrous when it comes time to inject the filling.
If the Twinkie were too hot, the cream filling would melt. And we want to make sure that that cake has set up enough so that it can hold the cream filling.
The filling injector is one of the most technologically advanced machines in the factory. It's like dozens of whipped cream cans turned upside down. The machine inserts 3-pronged nozzles into the cake. It's so fast it fills 14 Twinkies per second.
The most impressive piece of equipment in the bakery is how the cream filling gets inside the Twinkie. The injection nozzles leave 3 distinctive characteristic marks that are associated with the production of the Twinkie.
Another machine flips the trays and removes the cakes from the pans. This leads to one of the most controversial questions of all. What's really the top of the Twinkie?
The joke is the top is the bottom and the bottom's the top. Because as they come out of the oven, the top is really what's going to be the bottom when we sell it.
While millions of Americans enjoy Twinkies in their original form, some New Yorkers at Christopher Sell's Chip Shop in Brooklyn, New York, enjoy them an entirely different way, using a completely different technology.
The deep-fried Twinkie has become a staple in many state fairs around the country because of this gentleman in New York City and his fish and chips shop.
One night they were having a very slow night here, so Chris decided he would try to fry some other things. So he did M&Ms, and I think he did a cheeseburger, and he did the Twinkie, and everybody tasted the Twinkie, and everybody loved it, so he decided to try it on the menu.
The Twinkie is dipped in flour, then battered and dropped into the hot oil. It immediately begins to form a crust or shell. The Twinkie is served with berry puree and powdered sugar.
After Chris put the Twinkie on the menu, it was like a population explosion. Everybody comes in, can have 2 Twinkies. You know, people coming in can have 7 Twinkies. You know,
it's our most popular dessert here.
Any way you eat it, Twinkies continues to be one of America's #1 sweet treats. Twinkies, Peeps, Red Vines, Ben & Jerry's, Jelly Belly. You know the tastes. Now you know the amazing science and technology behind these sweet tooth treats. all revealed on Fantastic Food Factory.